Dr. Jasmine M. Shaw is a dynamic young researcher from Central University of Kerala at Department of Plant Sciences. And having completed a PhD from Madurai Kamaraj University in 2010, and subsequently awarded with the DST Inspire Faculty Fellowship from DST, and has got DST SERB Fast Track Young Scientist Fellowship. She joined Central University of Kerala in 2013, and she has made several international publications and book chapter, and has 3 current ongoing projects, and one from the Young Investigators Program in Biotechnology, which is awarded from Kerala Biotechnology Commission of Kerala. And she is the executive committee member and life member of the Society of Cytologists and Geneticists. She is specialized in plant genetic engineering and plant molecular biology. And her research interest is in plant molecular biology, especially the memory in plants. And today you are going to witness the webinar titled Stress-Induced Transgenerational Epigenetic Memory in Plants. And on behalf of Kerala Biotechnology Commission and KCST, let me now invite Dr. Jasmine M. Shah for the webinar. Dr. Jasmine, over to you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sarika, for the nice introduction. I am really glad that Kerala Biotechnology Commission kind of picked me. Like I was in a pleasant surprise when my research work was noticed by the scientists at Kerala Biotechnology Commission. So thank you so much for inviting me. So can I start the talk?
Yes, definitely. Yeah, yes.
How much time do I have?
I can take at least 45 minutes, and then we can have a discussion after that.
Okay. Okay, so I'll share the slides.
Okay.
Very good morning to all. I have to begin this morning with many sorries again. So yeah, the topic which we had decided to discuss today is stress-induced transgenerational epigenetic memory in plants. So as you must have guessed with the name that I'm going to talk something about memory in plants. Actually, I'm not wasting much time on this, but this word memory in plants kind of reminds of a short story written by Roald Dahl in his collection of short stories called Sound Machine. I'm not going much detail into this because of the lack of time, but one of my friend who is not from biology background, he says that he got reminded of this story when I told about memory in plants. So the story is nothing but it's about how a machine detects the sounds created by plants which we do not hear and things like that. So coming to the topic, yeah, plants, they are different from other animals or other higher eukaryotes, I would say, in the sense that they cannot escape from the stresses that they undergo. So all organisms undergo biotic and abiotic stresses, isn't it? We all know what these stresses are, but we have the choice to escape if we don't like that unfavorable conditions, but plants cannot do that. So that means that they have to adapt themselves for a better survival. Some strategies which which are unique for plants. So plants, whether it is plants or animals, any stress or any other external signal would generally create a cascade, isn't it? A cascade of signal transductions, ionic changes and transcription factors and activation, inactivation of certain genes. Now, the topic which I am going to discuss about is whether these stresses can be remembered by plants. So plants do not have the brains that we have, isn't it? The neurons and the nervous system, but still do they remember? So this is something which I would like to bring to your notice, especially we are now heading into the monsoon season. if you have observed your compound or locality, the plants, they kind of really flourish. They are pampered during this monsoon season, June, July, August, and all. And if you would have noticed very carefully, when the monsoon kind of ends and when the sun starts showing up, if it is really hot for 1 week, you can see the wilting of plants immediately. Means they can't even stand 3-4 days sunlight because they were pampered for a long time. But eventually they get tuned. So when intermittent rain comes and gradually the rain decreases and the summer heads in, the very same plants can survive better in the summer season. So when they are really pampered, they are not ready to face the harsh conditions. But when they are given intermittent harsh conditions, they can actually face the real summer. So this is something which all of us would have noticed it in our compound, or even our grandparents would have told. No, if all my audience are in Malayalam, no Malayalam, I can take the liberty. തെങ്ങിന് ഒത്തിരി വെള്ളം ഒഴിച്ചാല് they want this more water always, but if you put less water, then they can survive the summer. So something like that. Okay, so memory in plants is kind of we can think about it in two ways. One is the plant remembers in its own life cycle event of stress, which is say it will be there when it is in its later reproductive stage up to senescence. That is called as priming. And another type of memory is that it transfers to its progeny. That's called as transgenerational memory. So that's what I will be dealing with more in this presentation. So there are previous examples of transgenerational memory induced by various abiotic stresses. In fact, biotic and abiotic stresses. For example, heat stress on Arabidopsis had increased the fitness and survival of the individual, which was exhibited even by the progeny, first generation and second generation. So 1 and 2 is the generation. That means the grandchild also had relatively better fitness when it was subjected to a heat stress. Remember, Arabidopsis is not a plant of Indian climate. So it doesn't naturally grow in a hot condition. But if they're tuned to grow in hot condition, they can survive better. So similarly, biotic stresses like herbivory and others had in Brassica had given better growth and reproduction in population of plants, which was seen even in their second generation progeny. So now see, when there is a stress on any organism, plant or animal, it can cause a change in the genome. That is what evolution is about, isn't it? Something which the organism likes to change. So this change in the genome can fall into two categories. One is what we very well know, isn't it? The mutation, that is a permanent change. And the other one is what we call as epigenetic change. So what is epigenetic change is? Most of you must be knowing this, that DNA and histones, which are part of the chromatin, can undergo chemical modifications. Like DNA can undergo methylation, that is nucleotides can undergo methylation, and histones can undergo methylation, ubiquitination, acetylation, and so on. So these kind of modifications are what leads to epigenetic changes. But of these, methylation is more like I will spend more time on methylation because that's the one which is generally involved in transgenerational memory. So even non-coding RNA is recently known to be involved in epigenetic changes. So this is about histone acetylation, and I'm not spending much time on this because I have already wasted my time. You can go into it, but yeah, coming to when the DNA can remove the methyl group, that is called as demethylation. So addition and removal of methyl group on the DNA is involved in epigenetic changes. And in plants, generally, there are three types of methylations seen in the cytosine nucleotide. That is CG methylation, CHH, and CHG. So animals generally have CG methylation. So if there is a stretch of CG in the promoter region or regulatory regions of the gene or anywhere in the genome, such stretches are prone to methylation. In plants, apart from CG, we can also see CHH and CHG. CH is nothing but any other base except G. So the CG and CHG are called as symmetric methylation, and CHH is asymmetric. These changes in methylation are we can tell that they are involved in memory because they can actually survive DNA replication and the subsequent mitosis or meiosis, that is cell division. You know that cell division, mitosis or meiosis, is about division of the chromosome. But before the division of the chromosome, what happens is that DNA replicates, isn't it? So that DNA replication, when it happens, we know the information is faithfully passed on, isn't it? Information on the nucleotide, but even the information of methylation can be faithfully passed on in over a subsequent daughter strands. That is the main reason why this thing can act as a memory signaling or memory molecule. So here you can see CH3 is added in the daughter strands. So these changes are reversible. So they may or may not get transferred. It depends on the individual cases, case by case, depending on the stress, depending on the location where the changes has undergone, depending on the organism, and many other factors govern whether this change should be taken to the next after the cell division or not. So they are reversible changes. So that's why the main difference between mutation and epimutations or epigenetic changes, if you look at this graph, you can see mutations, you know, this orange line is genetic changes or mutation which keeps on increasing, accumulating over generations. So there is no going back. But epigenetic changes, because I told you they are reversible, in the presence of stress, they can suddenly increase and eventually they can decrease also. That's why there is so much of mismatch between both these type of inheritance. So genetic inheritance today we know that it is complemented by epigenetic inheritance. So it's a completely deviation from what we learn about Mendelian genetics. It's a completely different kind of concept, but yes, it is also heritable. So we cannot rule it out from inheritance, but this is a difference. That is, the pattern of inheritance is very, very much fluctuating depending on the external factors. So these are some of the examples where stress had caused transgenerational changes which were detected in certain loci of the genome. So certain loci had undergone methylation, and these methylations were seen in 2 subsequent generations. So UV radiation temperature had induced such loci-specific changes in Arabidopsis and laser in rice. And these changes, you know, they were carefully studied over generations. Now, this is in the lab. In natural conditions, there was a very good observation where you must have heard of the Chernobyl accident, where the flora and fauna was studied even years after the accident had taken place to see what the radioactivity had done to the biodiversity there. And it was found that these pinus trees and in fact most of the plants there survived really well after this accident. So eventually they had adapted to those conditions. So this was a study done 18 years after the accident, and the Arabidopsis grown in that geographical location, the wild Arabidopsis was taken for further analysis, and it was found that these Arabidopsis plants survived better in other mutagens like rose bengal and methyl sulfonate, and they had undergone a global higher hypermethylation, and they had 10-fold more somatic homologous recombination rates, and they had altered expression of certain DNA repair genes and so on under the exposure of mutagens. So this was an adaptation done by the flora when a natural radioactive calamity has taken place. So similarly, this is something which complements what we see in the lab. So these are some of the examples where certain abiotic and biotic stresses had induced different kind of epigenetic change. That is, I'm showing here both histone related changes as well as DNA related changes, and these changes lasted for say a few days, 5 to 7 days, a few days, which is not going to the next generation. But there were examples where the methylation was seen in further generation. So here you can see intergenerational and transgenerational. That's because intergenerational is nothing but this kind of terminology has come up when studies were done in animals, because animals have their gametes in the parent itself. So say a parent has undergone a stress, the gamete cells are there, and they said that they would have also undergone the stress. So the next generation, that is the progeny, we cannot call it as a true transgenerational because the gamete has undergone stress. But the second generation progeny, the grandchild, is a true transgenerational when it comes to animals. But in case of plants, they may or may not be intergenerational, because we know that in plants there is nothing called as germ cells, and flowers, reproductive cells come out of the vegetative cells. So if the plant is in vegetative stage, so we later on, if the flower is coming, the first progeny is transgenerational. But to be on safer side, people call it as intergenerational and grandchild as the transgenerational. Well, that is it's a relative term, but there are people prefer to use this word intergenerational. So yeah, there are many studies going on in this epigenetics related work. Recently, many groups are more interested into digging into this kind of a novel inheritance pattern. And this particular study, they had subjected Arabidopsis plants with various stresses, and of course they saw increased global methylation and altered recombination and all. And they found that dicer-like proteins, DCL2 and DCL3, were involved in this global methylation, which is a kind of indication that small RNA is somewhere involved in this kind of thing. And DCL2 was required for the epigenetic change to be transgenerational. So if the DCL2 was absent in the plant, they wouldn't show the transgenerational memory. So like this, there are many such reports going and taking interesting turns in the epigenetic field. Well, epigenetics is not just about the stress and all that. There are otherwise also we can see epigenetic changes naturally occurring in the in our diversity, like this example of fruit ripening. So here, see, we must have come across this kind of an altered phenotype, and this is not because of an allele or a mutant, but it is because of an epi-allele. Epi-allele means an allele which has undergone epigenetic changes. So genetically both are same, but due to the methylation, demethylation of this particular gene, there is an altered phenotype. So here it may not be due to stress, but it is just an epi-allele formation in the nature. So there are many such examples of epi-alleles giving a phenotypic change rather than the allele. So I'm not going into that part because it will lead into some kind of taxonomy or diversity and all that. I will stick on to my topic, but I will just bring to your notice one more example where epigenetic changes is involved in a routine gene regulation. That is not the stress induced, but this is the lifestyle of that organism. For example, here in kind of certain Brassicae family, there are certain plants which, especially certain type of ecotypes of Arabidopsis, they if they want to enter into flowering, so they have to undergo a winter season. So why that happens? If there is no winter, the plant will continuously be in vegetative stage. So why this kind of phenotype is seen in certain Brassicae family plants? The reason is there is a gene called FLC gene, which is which actually represses flowering. Okay, so FLC gene represses flowering, but when there is a winter, prolonged winter season there, what happens is the promoter region of FLC gene undergoes modifications, epigenetic modifications, because of which the FLC gene does not express. Now, when FLC gene does not express, the plant is now allowed to flower. So, this is kind of a requirement for the plant to survive. So, winter is required for the plant to survive, but the reason behind it is the epigenetic change in the FLC gene. So, this is a routine gene regulation happening in the plant. So, there are many such examples where epigenetic change can be either a routine gene regulation or an epiallele or a stress-induced memory. And the interesting part is all these three kinds of epigenetic changes require more or less the same mechanism. That is, the proteins involved in methylation, demethylation are more or less same. There's not much difference, but what decides which to take is something which is yet to be understood, where people are kind of trying to understand what is the demarcation between, which decides which will be, which mechanism will be taking over. So coming to my work, see, my group is mostly involved in plant agrobacterium interaction, and we had previously reported that agrobacterium tumefaciens, it alters the host mutation frequencies like homologous recombination, point mutations, and so on. Now, being a person in plant agrobacterium interaction, we wanted to dig more into it. So before that, I'll just take you to this organism. I'm sure all of you know that it's an important genetic engineering tool and it's a unique pathogen and all that. But what I would like to tell is it's not just about the plant genetic engineering that agrobacterium is used for. In fact, this interaction has revealed many novel concepts in other areas like plant bacterial interaction, gene silencing, DNA repair, and so on. In fact, even gene silencing was first discovered in plants, and that too because of the scientists were trying to create a transgenic Petunia plant with more chalcone synthesis, which gives a darker blue color. Instead, they got white flowers, and that's how silencing was discovered, where more copies of the same thing is dumped into the plant genome. It tries to silence it. So that way, agrobacterium plant interaction has paved way to many discoveries. So there are people in plant agrobacterium interaction would be crazy about these discoveries. Like, first time when crown gall was discovered, how it was discovered, say in the absence of bacteria, the tissue kept on dividing, and that was the first example of natural genetic engineering, and so on. So likewise, over the years, there were many milestones in the study, and I'm not going into that. But yes, coming to the methylation part, there were reports of global methylation and all that. Now, the people into this particular area, plant agrobacterium interaction, were always involved in understanding what are the key proteins or key players required for this tDNA integration. I'm sure you all are aware of this figure where tDNA is integrating into the genome. But these kind of colorful molecules that I show is nothing but proteins required into the for the proper transformation to take place. But still now, people have not understood who is the key player which cuts the native chromosome and integrates this tDNA. Still now, it is a confusing thing. Many reports keep giving contradictory proves. So our lab was also involved precisely in this area, like what is happening when the DNA is cut and ligated into the genome. A foreign DNA is ligated into the genome. So most of the previous studies were involved with the plant defense mechanism and agrobacterium Vir proteins and so on. So like my PhD student, Dr. Joyce, she was into understanding the DNA repair mechanism. Actually, I wrote this as a DST Inspire project like before I joined Central University, and later on Joyce joined me as my PhD student, my first PhD student, and together we decided to go into deeper aspects of DNA repair mechanism. So we did not have epigenetic in our mind at all. We were into this area, okay. And of course, there are many DNA repair systems, and Joyce started hunting into each and every pathway, and she analyzed different genes in every pathway, and so on. So how one strategy that we decided to take is what makes agrobacterium is its Vir proteins, oncoproteins, and tDNA, right? We all know that. So we decided to choose strains which do not have any of these factors. So based on these different the response of the plant to these different strains, we will be able to know which agrobacterium factor is involved in what kind of changes. The advantages here, we will be able to pin down to something that tDNA causes. So we can rule out oncoproteins and Vir protein. So of course, she did all the expression analysis at various time intervals, and she pinned down what is the role of these factors on this expression. I'm not going into all this. She even did a COMET essay and found out that agrobacterium, irrespective of the factor, oncogene, Vir protein, tDNA, it caused short-lived DNA strand breaks in the genome. So she did a meticulous work at looking at the various time intervals, and at 4 hours she could see such kind of breaks and all that. So we were heading into better understanding of what happens during plant agrobacterium interaction, in fact, tDNA chromosome interaction. Well, I'm not going into that, but what I would like to bring to your notice is we wanted to know what epigenetic changes would agrobacterium cause to these DNA repair genes. That is, whether the agrobacterium and its factors would regulate or control the promoters of the DNA repair genes. So we started with a methylation sensitive restriction based digestion and PCR kind of approach for understanding methylation. So this is nothing but digesting the entire DNA with methylation sensitive enzyme, so that the promoter region will not be amplified with PCR. But if the DNA is methylated and then digested, we will be able to see a PCR amplicon. So with that approach, we designed primers for all the DNA repair genes with multiple restriction enzyme sites, and then we infected the plants with various agrobacterium strains at different time intervals, so this is just a representative of how the result would be. So you can see the first cell is about an example of demethylation, where you can see a band in control. C is the control, but there are no bands in 4, that is 4, 24, 48, nothing but time intervals. No band, so that is example of demethylation, that is removal of methylation. So, and in the second gel, it is example of methylation where C doesn't have a band, but one of the infected treatment has a band. So band means methylation, no band means no methylation. So here the third gel is an example where control and treated are same. There is no change. So with this is just a representative gel. We had analyzed all the DNA repair genes with all these strains with multiple enzymes and all that. I'm showing some of the representative images. But yeah, to put the entire result into a nutshell, so this is what we got. Tick means methylation, dash means no methylation. Don't worry about this complicated table. It's actually not complicated. It's very simple. It just tells about different strains, different time intervals, what has happened to each and every gene. Now we could very clearly plot out the influence of different bacterial factors on these genes. That was the most interesting thing. Like the agrobacterial factors were very much specific in inducing changes, and there were few genes which were affected generally by the bacteria irrespective of the factor. So this was a very novel thing which we didn't expect, because plant is able to recognize bacteria differently, will protein differently, tDNA differently, oncogenes differently. So this is the first result that we got into our epigenetic phase. So we could identify the signatures in the promoter region. The empty bulb indicates demethylation and the filled bulb indicates methylation. Now, anybody, right, who knows now, who has entered into epigenetic and who knows that epigenetic memory is involved in transgenerational memory. So you can recall the slide. We were also curious to know now that the agrobacterium is able to cause these epigenetic changes, what will it do to the next generation, whether plant was able to remember the agrobacterium. So we decided to take our experiment to the second generation, where we did not infect the plants. Okay, only the parent was infected, and even to the third generation. Third generation, of course, because we got second generation result. So this is the result of all the three generations. So 6 genes showed epigenetic changes only in the first generation. That means those changes did not go to the progeny. Now 5 genes showed transgenerational changes, but it was retained only up to the progeny, that is second generation. So we call it as an intergenerational memory. And interestingly, 3 genes, 3 out of 22, we started with 22. So 3 out of 22 genes showed memory even in the grand progeny, third generation. That is transgenerational memory. And this was the kind of signature that we got. So we could, and interestingly or coincidentally, I would say, these 3 genes were influenced by 3 different bacterial factors: Vir protein, cDNA, and oncoprotein. That was the that was really surprising, because these factors are able to induce memory in plants. And what we could see is that there was a gradual loss of the memory. So even though I would say memory was there, if you can see, this number of bulbs is reduced in the progeny and grand progeny. Can you see this 1, 2, and 3? The number of bulbs have reduced, means the number of methylation signatures have gradually reduced over the generations. But yes, the third generation did retain some memory. So we cannot rule out the existence of transgenerational memory. But yeah, with all this thing, what we understood is, we started with understanding what is happening to plant tDNA integration, and there were previous reports of defense genes involved and other parameters. So our work on DNA repair genes and then the epigenetic regulation kind of actually has led to a more complex situation, where we feel that agrobacterium tDNA integration is not as simple as we can think about. There is not a single key player, but there are many factors happening at the same time. We started with this and we came back to this. So, well, now what I would like to tell is, agrobacterium is not the only pathogen which can cause these kind of changes. There are previous reports of other pathogens like Xanthomonas oryzae, tobacco mosaic virus, and others, which have caused epigenetic changes in the plants. But yeah, transgenerational memory, when we started our research, there weren't much reports. So you can see these changes, these reports were existing since 2007 and so on. But like we started our research in 2014. So at that time, there weren't any report on transgenerational memory. And ours was the first report of biotic stress inducing transgenerational memory on the DNA repair system. So parallelly, there were other reports also, like when we were doing our work, there were other reports of biotic stress inducing transgenerational memory. But focusing on DNA repair system, ours was the first report. And since it is involving agrobacterium, kind of generating more interest because it reveals more aspects on the tDNA integration into the chromosome and so on. So it was published, and actually, when this thing got published, it was a very in India, not many people are doing research on plant epigenetics and especially transgenerational memory. If I'm right, I know only 2 or 3 groups whom I know, which one is my postdoc guide. And memory in plants was a very interesting topic for people, whoever we talk to. And when I posted my this thing on FB group and so on, somehow the media came to know about it, and then Joyce came into the limelight, and we were interviewed, and so many media reports came over. So yeah, we like if you look globally, epigenetic research on epigenetic changes is taking pace off lately. So past 2 decades, there's a gradual increase in the research publications in plant epigenetics. Now it's like increasing really more. So with that, I would like to wind up my talk. I hope I am on time. So I would like to thank my PhD student, Dr. Joyce, for taking this challenging work and executing the work beautifully, meticulously, well planned, systematically done, and other students who helped on and off, and agrobacterial strains from.
Hello, Jasmine, your voice is not audible. No.
Voice not audible, right?
Yeah. Jasmine, can you hear? Yeah, voice is not audible. Yes, now we can.
സാരിക അതെ എന്റെ ഇതില് ഈ മ്യൂട്ട് ഓപ്ഷൻ ആരോ ടിക്ക് ചെയ്തിട്ടുണ്ട്. ഇപ്പൊ ഓഡിബിൾ ആണോ?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I can see this.
Yeah. You are done, no?
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Jasmine. In fact, we have got a couple of questions, I think. Anusha, can you please unmute yourself and ask?
Hello, ma'am. Can you hear me?
Anusha, you are a KCST research fellow, right?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, fine. You can ask.
So, ma'am, I want to know whether you have noticed any this transgenerational epigenetic memory in salt-tolerant species like mangroves and all.
That's a very interesting question. Actually, I'm not working on mangroves right now, but somebody should do that. it would be really good to know. In fact, not only
Yeah,
mangroves,
ma'am, I was
there is
working
a
on the salt tolerance mechanisms in mangroves. So at that time, I didn't notice about this epigenetic memory and all. So by hearing your talk, I just thought of whether you have noticed any such response in this salt tolerant species.
no, Anusha, actually, I don't work on mangroves, and as of now, all my PhD students are. So I would tell you should do research on that. You are already into mangroves. It's easy for you to write a project on this, and I'm sure definitely you'll come out with wonderful results. It is a must-do thing. Epigenetic changes in mangroves.
Okay, ma'am. Okay. And anyway, it was a nice presentation, ma'am. Thank you for such a wonderful presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anusha. Now, Nayana Narayan, can you please?
Hello, ma'am.
Yeah.
Ma'am, really, it was a really good presentation. The way you presented the entire thing, it was like listening to a story. You made such a difficult topic, explained everything in such simple way that I'm sure even a BSc student can understand it with so much clarity. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, ma'am, I do have a doubt. You said that like plants do use this particular transgenerational epigenetics to cope up with the stress, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and you even mentioned about the Chernobyl disaster and how the pine trees over there were able to overcome the situation. So that means can we make use of these trees to reclaim the radioactive waste, like as in the case of phytoremediation?
No, phytoremediation is different and adaptation is different.
Yeah.
So this is here. It's just that the plants somehow know to survive in that situation. That doesn't mean that they can be used for phytoremediation. But yeah, epigenetic changes are being used for phytoremediation by certain other organisms. So this research is recently few people are working on that. So it's like epigenetic changes is something which can touch all areas, and people on say like what recently there was Anusha's suggestion. Somebody working on salt stress should take up.
Yes.
Somebody working on phytoremediation should take up. Somebody working on biotic stress. Somebody working on yield. Likewise, people should take up more interest in these kind of changes. So that will reveal entire lot of secrets in plants, because previously, we used to think that entire secret of the organism is hidden in its sequence. So the whole world was after genome sequencing, understanding, and more data came out of the genome. People are lost because it's like initially it was thought junk DNA means nothing. Now we know junk DNA is involved so much in regulation, but even now we do not know what the entire junk DNA does. And now we know that it's not just the presence or absence of a DNA or a gene, but whether it expresses or not is a great thing. So even if you have a gene and if it doesn't express, it's as good as not having it. So now what controls the expression of the gene? That's where the gene regulation and epigenetics come into the scene. So now it's next step after the genome sequencing, then comes transcriptome sequencing, and now it is like again going into epigenome sequencing. So we are trying to more and more dig and understand the secrets of the human, or in fact the entire life. So it's like the research in when people talk about space and all this, you keep on going. What is there in the solar system, beyond solar system, in the galaxy, next galaxy, and what all? There is no end to it, isn't it? And it's something like that. You're going out, and here you're going in. That's the only difference. Here you're going into the cell, into it, and keep on getting new secrets coming out. So it's like that. So there are of lately many researchers are entering into epigenetics. It's like complementing the information that we had previously.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Now, Ria, you can just please unmute yourself and ask. Ria Johnson. She has a question. She wants to know what is the difference we can note in transgenerational memory and intergenerational memory.
Okay, that's nothing. It's very simple. See, in animals, okay, the gametes are present in the parent, isn't it? The egg and the sperm is present in the parent. So when a parent undergoes a stress, right, knowingly or unknowingly, the gamete is also undergoing stress, right? So when the progeny is developed, when the progeny comes, that is when the gametes fuse to give rise to zygote and you get a progeny. The zygote, even if it shows some changes, the changes we could say is because the gametes underwent the stress in the parent, right? So we cannot call it as a true transgenerational. It is we cannot rule out the reality or the truth that the gamete did not undergo a stress. So that's why the term intergenerational has come into place, because there are in animals especially there are reports that some of the memory of the stress is seen in the progeny but not in the grand progeny. So in grand progeny it is a true transgenerational. In case of plants, the egg and the sperm need not undergo a stress. The flower may be produced at a later vegetative stage where the plant does not have stress anymore. So the progeny can be transgenerational, and in fact, the grand progeny is always transgenerational. But this terminology intergenerational is of more importance when it comes to animals.
Okay.
Is that clear?
Ria?
Yes, ma'am, it's clear.
Okay, fine. Then a question from Alina Aruparail. She's asking, can you please tell something about the human interaction and plant epigenetics?
Yes, recently there is a lot of research going in this area, especially. Nowadays there are many reports that human habits like smoking, obesity, eating more, and all this is inducing epigenetic changes is such that it is affecting the progeny and so on. So there was a report which came in 2016 or 14, I don't remember, where the Holocaust survivors, their grandchildren, Holocaust survivors, that Nazi, those people who underwent a very bad torture during that tenure, their grandchildren showed the signatures of epigenetic memory which was undergone by their grandparent. So these epigenetic memory cause kind of psychological problems which are very subtle, which keeps on reducing over generation. But yeah, we cannot rule out even the grandchildren are having some of those epigenetic changes retained in their genome. So of lately there are many such cases. Even there are proofs that when the mother is pregnant, when she undergoes stress and trauma, it affects the baby. So that was a observation by us for years, isn't it? It's an observation. But now there is a scientific validation for this observation. Like why that happens is because of this epigenetic changes. So this stress is passed on to the zygote and the embryo, as a result of which, it affects the gene regulation. So when it affects the gene regulation, it actually affects the individual. So even when the baby is grown and later, some of these traumatic incidences which was there when it was in the womb may linger on later on. Even the example of this twins, monozygotic twins, both are genetically same, but still they eventually develop changes. That is because of people say because of food and environment and all that. Yeah, this environment and all this causes epigenetic changes. So like that, there are many n number of examples when it comes to humans.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, one more question. Means how human touch is having some influence on the plant epigenetic memory. Because I'm coming from a agricultural background, and my parents has always told me that if you are growing a plant and if you are touching it, if you are caring it, if you are loving it, it will be growing much better than that of anything. Okay, is there a relation between the human touch or the human love on the plant epigenetics or something like that?
I don't know. We need to work on that line, Alina. I don't have a student who is as passionate as you who would take time to love the plants and touch them. But something which can be tried, you know, but that sincerity should come from the student's part, like whether he or she is ready to do it. I don't know, but certainly I would love to do it if I get some time out of my teaching and doing many other extra activities in the university. But it is something which somebody should take up and
Okay, it's because I have read some papers that shows that the regular plant touch is having a difference in the plant growth and all.
see, some papers I have seen, they are scientifically incorrect. Okay, they just work on kind of a bias which our mind thinks about. We want a result to be in some way and we just interpret it in some way without doing a proper statistical analysis. I have seen such papers. They don't, first of all, deal with a huge population. You cannot come to a conclusion just by seeing one or two individuals, and just because they behave the way you want, that may be a bias from your side. So I wouldn't trust most of those papers. Okay, but scientifically we can do it. We need to look into a huge population and come to a conclusion. It's not impossible, it is possible. If somebody is ready to take up, yeah, you should. I can take it as a challenge.
Thank you, ma'am. Sure.
Okay. Are there any other questions? If not, shall we wind up? So thank you so much.
Ma'am,
Who is that?
can I ask?
Shabana. Yeah, please.
Ma'am, thank you for the session. Actually, in between, I lost my power network also. So I'm asking, is there any relation of this epigenetic stress with the plant endophyte selection or interaction? That is, it is said that the plants are usually selecting the endophytes, right? Not merely colonizing and all those things. Is there any relation with such epigenetic stress and endophyte selection?
Yeah, there are a couple of papers I came across on plant endophyte relation. There is definitely a lot of influence. See, that is the reason why certain plants survive only in the presence of endophytes. Otherwise, they don't. So there are certain cases like that, especially in some algae. You can see such examples. So, what is the kind of epigenetic change that these endophyte causes, and what are the genes which alter their expression is much to be understood. So there are one or two groups working in that line also in the world.
Ma'am, can you tell me which are the groups, or if you know, in Kerala, is there anyone?
No. In Kerala, no, not even in India. Okay. You can just Google it. I forgot those names, but you can just Google it. It won't be difficult. You just type this keyword, plant epigenetic endophyte. You will get lot of information. From that, you can select your desired thing. And if you're interested in those lines, you can do your research in that line.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, now it's time. Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Jasmine, for this wonderful, informative lecture. And as you can see from the chat box, many have enjoyed your presentation and have benefited out of it. That's just our intention is. And thank you so much for having spent such a wonderful time here with Kerala Biotechnology Commission. And on behalf of Kerala Biotechnology Commission, I thank you wholeheartedly for having accepted our invitation as made your presentation. Thank you so much. And I thank all the participants, my colleagues at KCST and all the participants on behalf of Kerala Biotechnology Commission for attending this webinar and making it lively. Thank you so much. We do have our next webinar next week, Monday, 24th at 11 a.m. Thank you so much. Have a good day. Thank you. Thank you, Jasmine.
Sarika ma'am, can I ask one doubt? Is it important to register for individual webinars? Like
Just to get a number of idea, just to get an idea of number of participants will be there in the webinar.
So നമുക്ക് മെയിലിൽ ഇതുപോലെ നോട്ടിഫിക്കേഷൻ വരും. എനിക്ക് 2-3 പ്രാവശ്യം ഞാൻ അറ്റൻഡ് ചെയ്ത 2-3 സർട്ടിഫിക്കറ്റ്സ് കിട്ടിയിട്ടില്ല. കഴിഞ്ഞ വർഷത്തെ കോവിഡിൽ നിങ്ങൾ നല്ലൊരു വെബിനാർ സീരീസ് നടത്തിയിരുന്നു.
അതെ. ഏതാ കിട്ടാത്തതെന്ന് പറഞ്ഞു ഞങ്ങൾക്കൊന്ന് ഡീറ്റെയിൽ അയക്കുമോ?
ഈ മെയിലിൽ ചെയ്താൽ മതിയോ?
KBC Biotech Kerala @gmail.com.
ലാസ്റ്റ് ഇയറിലാണ് ഞാൻ നോക്കിയിട്ടുണ്ട്.
ഓക്കെ, ഇനി കഴിഞ്ഞ ആഴ്ച ജോയിൻ ചെയ്തായിരുന്നോ?
ഇല്ല മാം, എനിക്ക് ഇവിടെ നമുക്ക് നെറ്റ് ഭയങ്കര പ്രശ്നം. ഇനി നമുക്ക് മെയിലിലേക്ക് വരുമോ?
ഇന്ന് ചെയ്തവരുടെയൊക്കെ വരും എന്തായാലും.
അതല്ല, ഈ അപ്കമിങ് വെബിനാർസിന്റെ
ഡീറ്റെയിൽസ് വരും.
ഓക്കെ, താങ്ക് യു മാം. താങ്ക് യു സോ മച്ച് മാം. നല്ല മാനേജറാണ്. ഐ മീൻ,
അയ്യോ, പുവർ ഓർഗനൈസേഷൻ ആരൊക്കെ അടിച്ചിട്ടുണ്ട്.
ആണോ? അതാ തുടക്കത്തിലുള്ള.
അതെ. ഓക്കെ, ബൈ.
ഓക്കെ മാം, ശരി.